What if you forgot the greatest love you ever had, but he remembered every moment and would burn kingdoms to find you? Welcome to today's story, The Black Queen Who Returned the Emperor's Heart. If you love emotional, cinematic ambw dramas with office romance, faith, time travel, royal betrayal, and unforgettable love, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story. Now, let's go back to the moment everything began. Atlanta, Georgia, present day. It started with a frozen card. Prudence Carter stood at the grocery store counter, her hand trembling slightly as the cashier ran her card again. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but it's declined." That didn't make sense. She had just gotten paid. Her paycheck always landed on Thursdays like clockwork. She laughed softly, trying to hide the sudden rush of anxiety crawling up her spine. "Try again," she said, smiling politely. "It's got to be a glitch." The cashier did. 3 times. Each beep felt like a slap. Prudence's heart hammered in her chest as she stepped aside, her phone already out. She logged into her banking app, expecting to see a mistake, maybe a withdrawal she'd forgotten. But instead, her stomach dropped. $0.14. She blinked. She checked her savings. Empty. Her credit card was maxed out. $22,300.91. Every account was drained. She stared at the screen like it had betrayed her, like the numbers were lying, but they weren't. And in the far corner of her mind, something began to click. One horrible truth chasing another. She had given him access, passwords, pins, because she trusted him. "God, no," she whispered. Her heart clenched so tightly it physically hurt. She grabbed her keys. She didn't even take the groceries. 30 minutes later, she stood in front of a suburban house she'd never been to before, but she'd followed the GPS location he accidentally left on last night while texting her. "Working late, babe. Can't call. It's hectic." The driveway was full. She walked slowly to the door. Knocked once. No answer. But a child's giggle echoed behind the window. Then another. Her fingers curled into fists. She knocked again. Harder. The door swung open. He stood there in sweatpants and a white t-shirt, holding a toddler on his hip. Another little boy clung to his leg, and just behind him was a woman, young, smiling, wearing his hoodie. "Prudence?" He looked like he'd seen a ghost. She couldn't speak. Her eyes moved from the boy to the toddler to the woman, back to him. Her voice finally broke free. "You have kids?" He laughed awkwardly. "Prue, I can explain." "No," she snapped, stepping forward. "Don't prue me. What is this? You emptied my accounts. You used my credit card. You—" Her voice cracked. "You lied to me. For 2 years. "Keep it down," he muttered. "My kids are here." "Oh, your kids," she spat. "Your real family." The woman behind him shifted, her smile gone. He sighed and stepped outside, shutting the door behind him with a dull click. "You said I was your world," Prudence said, voice shaking. "I let you move in. I bought you a car. I paid off your fines because you said you were starting over." He rolled his eyes. "You were convenient." Silence. Sharp and sudden. She blinked, her mouth falling open slightly. "What?" He crossed his arms. "You fell for every word. You think I was going to build a life with you? You were easy. Always trying to prove you were ride or die. Girl, I rode you straight to the bank." Prudence stepped back like he'd hit her. Tears welled up, but she didn't let them fall. "You said you loved me," she whispered. "You told me I was your wife in everything but name." "Yeah," he chuckled. "That's the thing about words. They don't cost anything." Her breath caught. Then everything blurred. Sound faded. The weight of what he said, what he meant, pressed against her chest like a concrete slab. She clutched her stomach suddenly, the pain doubling her over. He frowned. "You okay?" Her legs buckled. She reached for the porch railing, but missed, and then the world twisted. The sky folded in, and the last thing she saw before blackness swallowed her whole was his face, unbothered, watching her fall. She was floating. No weight, no pain, no time, only silence, and the faint echo of a voice she couldn't place. A man's voice, calm, strong, gentle. Who is she? I don't know, but she's breathing. A hand brushed against her forehead, and then light. Too much light? She opened her eyes and gasped. Third year of the reign of peace. Afternoon sun. Marketplace chaos. Prudence stumbled through a narrow alleyway, her breath hitching in sharp gasps. She clutched the edge of her hoodie and glanced around at the unfamiliar world pressing in from all sides. People wore long robes with intricate embroidery. The scent of ginger and incense swirled in the air. Horse-drawn carts passed, and at every corner, guards in bronze armor patrolled with rigid eyes. She didn't understand their language, not completely, but enough. Demon, spy, spirit in disguise. Whispers followed her like gnats. A merchant narrowed his eyes. "That's the woman who collapsed in the square." Another spat on the ground. She arrived from nowhere. No papers, no name. She's dangerous. Look at her skin. Cursed. Prudence took a step back. A child pointed. "She's not from here. My mother said she's a punishment from the gods." More voices, more faces. The circle closed in. Panic gripped her throat. I don't understand what you want," she cried, backing away. "Please, I just want to go home." Rough hands grabbed her arms. Someone threw a tomato. It burst against her shoulder with a wet smack. She stumbled. A woman screamed, "Burn her!" The mob surged forward, but before they could reach her, a single command sliced through the chaos like a sword. "Enough!" The crowd froze. A tall man stepped forward from the shadows of a tea house entrance. His presence was immediate, unshakable. Even the guards bowed low. He walked calmly to her and removed the hood. Prudence gasped. He was breathtaking. Smooth, sharp cheekbones, eyes dark as midnight, lips stern and unreadable. His long black hair was in an updo, revealing a silver mark along his temple, some kind of emblem woven into his braid. "I said enough," he repeated coldly. "She's a spy, Lord," one man shouted. "She's a foreigner," another spat. "Then you will treat her as a guest," he said, his voice like stone. "And if any of you dare lay a hand on her again—" He paused. His eyes flickered with quiet threat. "You'll answer to me." Silence fell. No one spoke. No one moved. Then he turned to her. His voice softened. "Come." That night, inside the palace, Prudence sat stiffly on the edge of a low bed in a lavish chamber that didn't feel real. The room was too beautiful. Golden candlelight dancing against jade screens, silk pillows stacked like clouds, the smell of fresh lotus water drifting in from the nearby courtyard. She was wearing a robe, pale lavender with silver embroidery, too soft, too fine. She hadn't spoken much. She couldn't. The language barrier sat like a wall between her and everyone else. But the servants had been kind, silent, obedient, and scared. They wouldn't meet her eyes. She was alone now. Her fingers curled around her knees as she stared at the floor, her chest tightening with every breath. Her boyfriend's words echoed in her head. You were convenient. Her bank accounts, her trust, her heart. He'd broken everything. And now, she was here, somewhere in a different world, a different time. No phone, no GPS, no exit. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She buried her face in her hands and let the sobs come, quiet but sharp, her whole body trembling. She didn't see the door slide open, didn't hear the footsteps, but she felt the presence. She looked up and saw him, the man from earlier, no longer cloaked. His robes were deep sapphire, embroidered in gold. His long hair was in an updo, shining like black silk. A jade seal hung from his waist, his posture regal, still. But his expression, he looked concerned. I'm sorry, she whispered, wiping her tears quickly. I didn't mean to cry. You were afraid, he said quietly, and alone. She blinked, surprised he spoke some of her language. He stepped forward. They call me Horan. He waited. She swallowed. Prudence. He repeated it slowly. Prudence. His voice curled around it gently like he was memorizing it. She gave a small nod. You help me. He knelt. Not sat. Knelt a few feet from her. I did what any man should have done, he said, but not every man would have. She looked at him. He seemed too calm, too controlled, but his eyes weren't cold. They were watchful, curious, and underneath that, there was something else, a pull, a gravity between them that neither could name. Why did you save me? She asked, voice trembling. He tilted his head. Because even a stranger, he said, deserves to be treated with honor. Their eyes locked. Neither moved. The candlelight flickered between them like a held breath. Later, that night, outside her chamber, Horan stood by the door, hands clasped behind his back. He hadn't left since he walked her there. He told the guards to stand down. The silence of the palace stretched around him, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. Inside, he heard nothing. He didn't need to. He had seen her eyes. They were full of quiet agony. This woman was running from more than fear of the unknown. She was heartbroken, betrayed, wounded in ways he could not yet understand. But he had felt it. He wasn't supposed to. He was emperor. He had advisors, concubines, generals, plans. He had no room for softness. And yet, something in her presence had unraveled the steel in him. She was not of this world, but somehow, she already belonged in his. The next morning, Royal Council Chamber. The court was in uproar. She must be interrogated, shouted Minister Li. No name, no origin, no papers. What foreign nation sent her? She could be an assassin, yelled another. She's not one of us, the dowager hissed. That alone is danger. Howran sat on the throne, robes cascading around him like water. His fingers drummed against the carved armrest. The woman stays, he said flatly. A stunned silence. But she stays, he repeated colder, as my guest, under my protection. But your majesty? He stood. The room fell to its knees. I said she is mine to protect, he said. If anyone lays a finger on her without my permission, you will answer to me. No one spoke again. And high above the council chamber, on the balcony that faced the rising sun, Prudence stood watching. Wrapped in lavender silk, her eyes still red from crying, but now wide with quiet awe. He had defended her. Again. But why? She didn't know it yet. But her arrival had changed the tides of the empire, and Howran, the emperor who once vowed never to fall, was already beginning to break that vow. Morning. Inner palace garden. The sun rose in ribbons of gold. casting long shadows over stone pathways and flowering plum trees. Palace maids bowed low as they passed the quiet woman kneeling beside a vine. Prudence wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and adjusted the small stool she sat on. It was strange, being in such luxury and choosing to work, but she hated sitting idle, watching servants trip over inefficient routines, seeing potential everywhere for things to run smoother. She pointed to the basket beside one of the younger maids. Group things by type, roots together, blossoms separate. That'll save you time when you boil them later. The girl blinked, hesitant. You speak? Some, Prudence smiled. Enough. I'm learning. Another maid approached with a puzzled look. Who taught you this method? My grandma, she said softly, a touch of warmth crossing her face. Back in my world. The maids exchanged looks but nodded, impressed. Word spread, as it always did in palaces. Later that day, royal study. Your Majesty, Chancellor Wei said carefully, the foreign woman is educating the kitchen staff. She is improving their system, Horan replied, not looking up from the scroll he was signing. She is also reorganizing herb storage and asking questions about the harem library. Horan set his brush down, slowly, calmly. Is she disrupting order? No, sire, but... Then let her be. The room fell quiet. She is not here by design, Horan said, leaning back in his seat. And until we understand why she is here, it is unwise to provoke her. Wei hesitated. Do you trust her? I trust my instincts, he said simply, and they tell me she is not a threat. Outside the window, plum blossoms drifted in the breeze like silent confetti. That afternoon in the guest wing, he visited her, again. It had become routine, something unscheduled, unspoken, but certain. Every day around the fifth bell, he appeared. No guards, no scribes, just Haran in informal robes and a thin air of curiosity. She always sat on the window bench with a cup of tea. He always stood at first, reluctant to sit unless she invited him. Are the rumors true, she asked one afternoon, that emperors have thousands of women? He arched a brow. That would be excessive. So, hundreds? 56? She choked on her tea. You're serious? I did not select them, he replied coolly. Most were political offerings. It was expected. But you don't. No, he said, voice firmer now. I've never touched a woman in that wing. They are safe, sheltered, not for my pleasure. She stared at him, something soft blooming in her chest. He looked away first. You were asking about the library? Yes. That night. Outside her quarters, Prudence stepped out, a light shawl around her shoulders. The evening air had a bite, but the moonlight painted everything in silver peace. She didn't expect to see him waiting outside again. You came back, she said softly. I never left, Horan said. Then he paused. You're cold. Before she could reply, he held out a folded object wrapped in soft paper. She opened it slowly. A silk scarf, midnight blue, embroidered with clouds and birds. It shimmered like it was made of wind. It's beautiful, she breathed. Why? He hesitated. To keep the wind away from your throat, he said. It's thinner here than in your world, I've noticed. She looked up at him. He wasn't smiling. He was watching her, like she was a storm he didn't know how to survive, but couldn't stop chasing. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded, then looked out into the moonlit garden. Why were you crying the first night? He asked. She blinked. She hadn't thought he saw. I was heartbroken, she said. Someone I trusted used me, lied to me, left me with nothing. Silence. I was an orphan, she added, raised by my grandma. She passed just before everything went wrong. So, there was no one left. His eyes flickered. No one? She shook her head. I gave everything to someone who saw me as disposable. He looked at her then, long and still. You are not disposable. Those words, software steady, absolute. Prudence felt something in her chest unravel. He bowed slightly. Good night, Prudence. Then he left. She touched the scarf and smiled. The next morning, Palace Garden. Prudence walked slowly under the peach trees. The scent was heavenly. She needed the quiet, needed space to think. Maybe she'd always been alone, but Haran's presence was starting to feel solid, safe. She turned a corner. Too late. 3 cloaked figures rushed toward her. She screamed, stumbled back. One pulled a blade. The other 2 lunged. But a blur of movement cut through them. Swords clanged. A shout. Blood. Guards. Dozens of them. And at the center, Haran himself, sword drawn, face like a storm. Get her out of here! The assassins fought viciously. Haran took one down himself, slicing through the man's shoulder and kicking him into the koi pond. 2 guards pulled Prudence behind a stone pillar. She was shaking. He had come, again. He was always watching, always protecting. Dusk, the Emperor's private garden. The chaos had passed, but the blood on Haran's robe had not. Prudence stood beside him, hands trembling as she tried to unfasten the outer layer of his garment. He was seated on a stone bench, jaw clenched, face pale. The wound was just above his ribs, deep but clean. It's not mortal, he said through gritted teeth. The blade missed the lung. Oh, well, thank God for that, she snapped, yanking the cloth with more force than necessary. Let's celebrate the fact that your rib is only mostly stabbed. He chuckled softly. You sound angry. I am. Her eyes burned. You threw yourself between me and a knife, Haran. You could have died. His voice dropped. I would do worse than see your blood spilled. She froze. Those words, they hung in the air like incense, heady and impossible to ignore. He looked up at her then, slowly. And in that moment, he wasn't the emperor of the Eastern Kingdom. He was just a man, bleeding, beautiful, and falling. For her. She turned away quickly, blinking fast. I need hot water and thread. Later in his chamber, he sat shirtless by the hearth, the fire casting golden shadows across his skin. She leaned in, gently wiping blood from the wound with a cloth. He hissed. Sorry, she murmured, breath shaky. Don't apologize, he said. Just don't look so sad. I'm not sad, she whispered. I know heartbreak when I see it. She paused. He didn't push, just let the silence sit there like a shared secret. I've seen good men break, she finally said, threading the needle, but not like you. You're still whole, still gentle. He turned to her. Only when you're near. Their eyes locked. The air thickened. A week later, Inner Palace. The harem had been a place of cold stares and whispered judgments. But Prudence didn't hide. She met the concubines where they were. Some bored, others bitter, most forgotten. And she taught them hygiene, literacy, trade, defense. They practiced calligraphy together, mapped trade routes for better selling of their handmade goods, even learned basic self-defense from one of the retired palace guards Haran sent quietly at her request. You don't have to be useless just because someone labeled you that, Prudence told them one afternoon. You're not decoration. You're not waste. You are women. Start acting like it. It was tough love, but it worked. And slowly, laughter returned to the women's quarters. Harmony. Later, that night, the Emperor's study. Hauran watched the courtyard below, eyes tracing the moonlight over the fish ponds. Behind him, Prudence leaned back in a low chair, half asleep after helping him review trade proposals. "Are you sure I'm not overstepping?" she murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Teaching your women like that?" He turned. "My women?" "I mean, the harem. Your concubines." "They may be under my roof," he said softly, "but their hearts are not mine." "Then whose heart is yours?" He didn't answer, because she was asleep before he could, and he just stood there, watching her breathe. "Your Majesty," a servant whispered, "shall I wake her?" "No, but I'll do it myself." He stepped forward and gently gathered her into his arms. Her head fell against his chest, lips parted in quiet dreams. He adjusted the scarf he gave her, tucking it beneath her chin. As he carried her to her room, he whispered something only the moon could hear. "I never believed in fate until you." 2 days later, the royal court. The ministers bowed low as Hauran entered the throne room, his footsteps slow but deliberate. He was in full royal attire today, black and gold, the jade seal of the empire hanging from his sash. He raised a hand. "Today, we recognize a name never before written on our maps, a region of new irrigation, fertile ground, and rebirth." Gasps. The chancellor looked up, alarmed. "My lord, which name shall we bestow?" Hauran turned to the royal cartographer. "Draw it carefully, every character precise." He said it clearly, in front of nobles, ministers, and generals. The valley of Prudence. Dead silence. Then a ripple of outrage behind folded fans. "A foreigner," whispered the dowager. "A woman with no title," hissed the war minister. But Hauran remained still, resolute. "She brought prosperity to my house," he said calmly. "To my people. Her name belongs in the soil she helped nourish." And no one could argue, not with the look in his eyes. The shadows clung to the corners of the war tent like secrets. A man knelt in the dim light, head bowed low, his breath shallow with fear. Before him stood a younger man dressed in black and emerald, robes marked with the symbol of a coiled dragon, strangling a phoenix. Prince Jiangxian didn't smile. He rarely did. Instead, he sipped from a jade cup and said coldly, "Speak." The spy bowed lower. "Your brother has fallen." Silence. The fire cracked. "In battle?" the prince asked. "No, my lord, in love." The prince slowly lowered his cup. "Emperor Hauran's heart belongs to the foreign woman," the spy said. The prince leaned back. "The orphan?" "Yes. The palace whispers her name now. Prudence. He even named a province after her." A pause. Then the prince's smile finally returned. Tight, cold. "Good," he said, rising to his feet. "Then now I know where to strike. Eastern Empire, morning light, over the valley of Prudence." Prudence stood at the top of the ridge, sunlight kissing her face, the wind tugging at her scarf. The same midnight blue one Hauran had given her weeks ago. Below her stretched golden fields of rice and wheat, blossoming orchards, small irrigation canals carved with care. A place reborn from dry soil, named in her honor. She could barely speak. "You did this," she whispered. "No," Hauran said beside her on horseback. "We did." He handed her the reins of her mare and mounted his own. "Come," he said. "I want to show you what your ideas have done." They rode side by side through the valley. Farmers waved, children scattered petals in their path. Women held up books, simple ones, the very ones she helped the palace scribe reprint for female use. She'd suggested the public library. Hauran built 3. She suggested fair wages for palace workers, He expanded it to merchants and farmers, and everywhere they passed, people smiled at her. "They love you," she murmured. "They love what you've brought," he said. She shook her head, laughing softly. "This is your kingdom, Hiran." He looked at her then, no guards nearby, no ministers watching. "My kingdom only became home after you walked into it." That night, they camped under the stars. The tent was simple, just one lantern, 2 cushions, and the sound of wind through tall grass. Prudence sat beside the fire in a thick robe, sipping ginger tea. Horan watched her, arms crossed, silent. "What is it?" she asked, catching his gaze. He hesitated, then finally said, "Why don't you ask any more about going back to your world?" She looked down at her cup. "I used to," she whispered, "every day. I used to plan what I'd do when I got back, where I'd go. But now," she looked at him, voice trembling, heart open, "now I don't want to leave." His eyes softened. "There's no one waiting for me there," she said. "Not anymore. But here, I feel seen, useful, alive." "And loved?" he asked quietly. She froze. The silence stretched, then, barely above a whisper, "Yes." He reached forward and gently took her hand. "You are my favorite story," he said, "and I have read many." She looked into his eyes, heart racing. "Then read me again," she whispered. He leaned in, but didn't kiss her. Instead, he brushed a curl away from her cheek and said, "I will read you until the final line and write new chapters with you if you'll stay." Later. That night, General Rue crossed the valley under cover of moonlight. Dust caked his armor. He did not bother with formalities. He pushed into the Emperor's tent and bowed low. "Forgive me, Your Majesty." Haoran rose from his seat, frowning. "What's wrong?" Rue looked toward the corner where Prudence's shadow stretched long and still. She was asleep, wrapped in his royal cloak. Then the general stepped closer and whispered, "Our spies intercepted a message." "From where?" "The Western Empire." "Who sent it?" Rue hesitated. "Your stepbrother." Horan's entire expression changed. Cold, focused, lethal. "He wants her," Rue said. "He's planning something. We don't yet know what, but she is the target." Horan's jaw tightened. He looked back at her, curled in peaceful sleep by the fire. His voice was deathly quiet. "Then let the West remember. If they touch one hair on her head, they won't have a kingdom left to return to." Before sunrise, Imperial training grounds. The air was cold enough to kiss breath into fog. Prudence stood in the shadows beneath the blossom tree, wrapped in her robe, arms crossed to fight the chill. The scent of plum lingered in the air. She knew she should have been sleeping, but her feet had brought her here, again, because this was her favorite secret. Every morning before dawn, before the palace stirred, Emperor Haran trained, barefoot, shirtless, blades flashing silver in the low light. His movements were poetry, fluid and precise, a man in perfect control of every muscle, every breath. She watched, heart fluttering. He moved like a man who had known violence and chosen peace. And now he was fighting for something else entirely. Her. "I should charge admission," came his voice, breaking her trance. She flinched. "You saw me?" "I always do." He spun the blade once, slowly, and she watched as the light slid along the curve. "Is this why you ran off to bed so early last night?" he teased, approaching her with a crooked smile. "So you could sneak out before sunrise just to watch your emperor train?" She tried to look indignant, but failed. "I wasn't watching," she muttered. "No." He was closer now, glistening with sweat, eyes dancing. Then why do your cheeks look guilty? I was appreciating, she corrected. There's a difference. He stepped forward, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. You woke early for me, he said. Does that mean you dreamed of me too? Her voice was barely a whisper. Every night. He kissed her, softly at first, then deeper. And as their lips met, as his hand slid behind her neck and hers tangled in the fabric at his waist, something inside her cracked. Because she wanted to stay. She wanted this. But could she? The tears slipped down without warning. Silent. Hot. He pulled back, forehead still resting against hers. You're crying, he murmured. She shook her head, voice trembling. I don't know what's wrong with me. He didn't ask more. He just pulled her into his arms and held her. I know what's right, he whispered, and it's you, here, with me. Later, that day, at the Festival of Lanterns, the courtyard blazed with color, lanterns floating above, silk streamers dancing between wooden stalls, the smell of roasted sweet buns and sesame oil filling the air. The people sang, the nobles laughed, and Haran never left Prudence's side. She wore a pale gold gown embroidered with birds in flight. Her hair was gathered with small pearl pins. Children followed her, giggling and giving her candies wrapped in paper. She gave each one a blessing. You are the moonflower tonight, Haran said softly in her ear. She blushed. And you're the sun, always watching me. Always. Moments later, a silk-robed official approached, bowing deeply. From the artisans of Yun province, for Lady Prudence, he said, to honor her impact on our markets and education. He held out a box, black lacquer carved with roses. Inside was a jeweled hairpin, delicate, crimson rubies, silver petals. It sparkled like it had been plucked from a royal star. Prudence gasped, It's beautiful. No, Haran said sharply. Don't touch it. She paused, startled. It's a gift. I said don't. Too late. Her fingers brushed the hairpin. And then she smiled, teasing, You're being paranoid, Your Majesty. I'm not that easy to. She staggered, everything tilted. Laughter warped into echoes. The lights blurred. She turned toward him, lips parting, and then collapsed mid-dance, her body crumpling like silk. Chaos. Prudence! Haran was beside her before anyone could blink, catching her before she hit the floor. Clear the square, he roared. Now! He gathered her in his arms, her face pale, her lips turning blue. Breathe, he whispered. Don't leave me. Not like this. She didn't respond. 3 days later, the Imperial Infirmary. The room was dark except for a few lanterns. Haran sat motionless at her bedside, unshaven, his robe wrinkled and unfastened at the collar. He hadn't moved in 3 days. Not to sleep, not to eat. His generals came, his ministers, the royal physicians. He waved them all away, because she hadn't woken. And if she didn't wake, he would burn the world. Come back to me, he whispered, gripping her hand. You said you dreamed of me. Then dream your way back. Please, Prudence. He pressed his forehead to her wrist and whispered again, I love you. Then, just before sunrise, her body began to glow faintly. Soft light, impossible light. And then she vanished. Right in front of him, the Emperor screamed, a sound so raw, so human, it brought every physician, guard, and servant running to the chamber. But there was no thief, no magic, no explanation, just an empty bed, and an emperor on his knees, holding her scarf in his trembling hands, whispering her name over and over again. Prudence, don't do this. Come back to me. But she did not come back. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. Elsewhere, the beeping came first. Then the sterile smell of disinfectant. Prudence opened her eyes to a ceiling she recognized. White, tiled, modern. She gasped, sitting up, then nearly fell back from dizziness. A nurse rushed over. "She's awake! Doctor!" The voice was familiar. The bed, the hospital. She was home. No silk, no Haran, no empire. Just the cold, sharp edge of fluorescent lights. She stared at her hands. No rings, no jade bracelets, no blue scarf. Like none of it had ever happened. But she remembered nothing. Eastern Empire, the Imperial Infirmary. Day 4. She was gone. The silk pillows she once slept on lay undisturbed. Her teacup still sat beside the window ledge. A single strand of her hair clung to the cushion where her head had rested. Haran had not moved from her bedside in hours. The man who brought the black lacquer box bit down on silence before the guards could seize him, choosing death over confession. But Haran didn't need words. He could hear the betrayal in the wind, taste the lie on the lacquered wood. His stepbrother's fingerprints were all over it, and somewhere deep within, the gentle emperor exhaled his last breath of mercy. So this is how far he's willing to go. Poison, lies, and silence stitched into the seams of a gift. He thinks I won't burn down heaven to reclaim what's mine. I gave him peace. I offered him brotherhood. I let him breathe beneath my reign. And still, he reached for what I treasured most. She was my heart before I knew it had a name. She was the only softness left in me. Now she's gone. And he thinks I will kneel? No, let the rivers run red. Let the sky remember my name. I will carve open the earth to find her. And when I do, Zheng Xian will beg for the mercy I buried with my crown. A week later, the ministers gathered with grave expressions, heads bowed low. The royal elder trembled as he read the new scroll. Your Majesty, we have searched every province. No trace of the foreign woman has been found. Some believe she may have been an omen, sent by the gods. Now that she is gone, finish that sentence, Haran said, his voice ice. The elder paled. She was a sign of war, the Empress Dowager said coldly. We opened our gates to the unknown and invited destruction. You let her speak in court. You named land after her. You let her into your heart. I let kindness into my heart, Haran cut in. And for that, the gods punished me, not you. He stood, slow and controlled. But hear me well. If any of you dare speak of her as a mistake again, I will tear your tongues from your throats and salt the ground beneath your homes. The court fell silent. Their emperor had changed. Atlanta, Georgia, Prudence stared out the hospital window as machines beeped softly behind her. She'd been in a coma for weeks. Doctors called it a miracle. No damage, no long-term trauma. Her vitals were stable, but her memories? A blur. I feel like I lost something, she told the nurse one day. Like I forgot something huge. The nurse smiled kindly. Coma dreams can be intense. Probably just your brain's way of coping. She tried to believe that. Tried to convince herself that the long nights with the emperor, the kisses under moonlight, the scarf tucked under her chin, weren't real. But when she closed her eyes, she could still feel him. She just didn't know who he was. Eastern Empire. Months later. The emperor, once known for his gentle rule, had become something else entirely. He no longer played music in the garden. He no longer walked the palace halls at night, stopping to speak to his people. The scarf she had worn now hung in his private chambers, untouched. Her name was forbidden in court, but her memory, It was everywhere, and it burned. Haran had not slept properly in weeks. He trained harder than ever before, his sword now an extension of his rage. The empire's borders grew sharper. The drums of war pounded day and night. And then one morning, he rode into court, his black armor dusted with frost. General Rue knelt before him. "Sire, what are your orders?" Haran's voice echoed like a war bell. "Remind every kingdom who rules this land. Burn their flags, break their treaties, shatter their walls. If she is anywhere in this world, I will find her, and if not, then let the gods give her back to me, or watch their nations fall." At the borderlands, months later, villages whispered his name with fear. The once beloved emperor was now a phantom on horseback, never smiling, never hesitating, always watching. He fought at the front lines, bled with his men, tore through enemy camps like a god of vengeance. 2 years later, Eastern Empire. The empire had changed. So had its emperor. Where once poetry filled palace halls, now silence reigned. Where once Haran walked among farmers and scholars, now his name was carried by the wind like a warning. Children no longer played with wooden soldiers painted in his image. Now they had nightmares about him instead. He was no longer the man who read at sunrise or gave scarves to women with trembling hands. Now he was the tyrant of the East, ruthless, unbending, relentless. He crushed rebellions before they formed, broke alliances that dared question his grief. Kingdoms fell, cities bowed before his blade, and every night he returned to the imperial chamber alone, sat before the altar where her scarf still lay folded, and whispered her name into the silence. Prudence. The world feared him, but the only thing Haran feared was forgetting her face. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Sunlight poured into the little bookstore on 23rd Street, where Prudence worked part-time while building her life back together. Her heart was quieter now. She laughed more, even if she didn't always know why she felt so hollow at night. She'd moved cities, made new friends, got promoted, was even planning to open her own creative therapy studio for women recovering from trauma. Her life was good, stable, whole, except for the dream, the one she couldn't explain. Always the same: moonlight, lanterns, and the scent of plum blossoms on the wind. Later, that week over coffee. "Here," her friend Chelsea said, dropping a thick, weathered book into her lap. "I found this in an old stall on 9th. Thought of you." Prudence raised a brow. Emperor of the Eastern Sky, the reign of Haran, the Crimson Emperor. Historical fiction, Chelsea grinned. "You love old legends." Prudence flipped through the pages. Black ink, ancient-style prose, beautifully written. And then she saw it. Chapter 1. The Woman in the Golden Gown. She blinked. Weird. "What?" Chelsea asked. "Nothing. Just déjà vu." That night, reading in bed, she couldn't put it down. It was too beautiful. The early chapters were radiant. A peaceful emperor, a mysterious foreign woman who changed his court, softened his heart, changed the lives of concubines and peasants alike. Their love was poetic, sacred, unbreakable. She cried 3 times before chapter 12, but then the shift, and the emperor unravels. He turns cold. He marches on neighbors. He burns alliances. 2 weeks later, over lunch, "I hate this book," Prudence muttered, stabbing her salad with unnecessary force. Chelsea snorted into her drink. "You were raving about it 2 days ago." "I was, because it was beautiful until the author butchered the emperor." She flipped the novel closed on the table between them. The Crimson Emperor. The gold title glared up at her like an accusation. Chelsea raised an eyebrow. You mean when he became a raging tyrant? There was no reason for it, Prudence snapped. He was kind, thoughtful, loyal, and then suddenly he's burning cities to the ground, and no one explains why. Chelsea shrugged. Maybe that's the twist. Some people just snap. No, it doesn't make sense. Her voice wavered. It feels wrong. Like the story is missing a chapter. Like the author forgot to tell us something crucial. Chelsea leaned back, amused. You do realize it's fiction, right? Prudence didn't answer. Chelsea tilted her head. Prue, you're acting like this guy broke up with you. Prudence blinked fast. Her voice came low, hoarse. I think I knew him. Chelsea sat up. What? I know that sounds insane, but when I read this book, I feel things I can't explain. Not just emotion, memories. You've been through a lot lately, Chelsea said. I've read the same paragraph 15 times, trying to figure out what changed him. Chelsea frowned. Prue, I can't stop reading it, she whispered, because every time I close the book, it feels like I'm missing something. Chelsea chuckled, then stood. Drop the book and read something happy for once. Want me to find you a rom-com? No, Prudence said, gripping the book. I need to finish this one. That night, at 3:12 a.m., the window was open. She didn't remember opening it. The wind whispered through her room, carrying the scent of plum blossoms. She blinked, sat up. The book lay open beside her, the ink shimmering unnaturally. She touched the page. Everything tilted. Moments later, foreign military camp. Screaming, shouting, horses, steel. Prudence gasped, stumbling backwards into mud. The cold pierced her lungs. The world was spinning. Firelight, tents, soldiers in foreign armor. Someone shouted in a language she didn't recognize. A sword was drawn. Then another voice, clear, deep, commanding, "Wait!" She turned and froze. It was someone who knew her. He stepped forward slowly, armor black as night, eyes cold as winter. He stared at her like she was a ghost. "You," he whispered. She backed away. Who are you? Where did they find you?" he asked. I don't know what's happening. The soldiers began to circle her. He reached for her arm. She slapped his hand away. "Don't touch me!" He blinked. "You don't remember," he said, almost to himself. She stared, terrified. And in that moment, the war she had unknowingly returned to was about to reignite. Northern Territory, the Black Moon Fortress. It was colder here. Even the wind felt like it held its breath. Prudence sat by the window of a small chamber carved into a mountain wall, wrapped in a heavy cloak of unfamiliar fur. She stared out at the snow-covered trees and rolling fog, her heart pulsing like a drum inside a cage. 3 days. She'd been here 3 days, and nothing made sense. She still didn't know how she got here. No phones, no electricity, no signs of modern life. Only warriors in black and emerald armor. Only the chilling weight of a sword always nearby. And then there was him, Prince Zhang Xian, the man who said he could keep her alive. That evening, "You're trembling again," the prince said as he poured her tea. He was handsome, impeccably dressed, smile carved with precision. She didn't trust it. "I'm just cold," she murmured, "or scared." He leaned forward, hands folded on the lacquered table. "I can help with that." She looked up. "I don't belong here," she whispered. "I'm not from this world. I don't remember how I got here. I don't even know who I am." "You're someone the emperor once claimed," he said. That alone makes you dangerous. Claimed? She blinked. What does that mean? He studied her for a long moment, then said slowly, It means the most powerful man in this realm wants you dead. Her throat closed. What? Why? Because you left him, the prince said, and Horan doesn't forgive betrayal. Not anymore. She blinked hard. The name sent a shiver down her spine. Horan, she echoed. I've heard that name before. Yes, the prince said, pouring more tea. The Eastern tyrant, the one who burned down 5 kingdoms. They say he rides in black, covered in the blood of his enemies, that even his own men fear him. But I don't remember him, she said. I don't remember anything. And that's your greatest weapon, he replied, because if he finds you, he'll take everything. She looked down at her trembling hands. Who am I really? Why does that name pull at my chest, but also scare me so much I can't breathe? The next morning at the village below, whispers chased her wherever she went. That's her, isn't it? The woman he named a province for? But she left him. She betrayed him. He went mad after that. I heard he killed a whole village looking for her. He said he'd burn the world to find her again. She walked faster, hood pulled low. She couldn't understand why her chest tightened at every mention of Horan, why her hands ached to touch something, someone she couldn't even name. Maybe I did know him, she whispered to herself. Maybe I really did. Leave. But why? That night, Prince Zhangxian brought her to the northern balcony, where the stars stretched like diamonds across the frostbitten sky. There's a war coming, he said, and you're at the center of it. I didn't ask for this. No, but fate rarely asks permission. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. You could die out here, he said, alone, lost, with no memory, no allies, no way home. So what are you suggesting? Marry me? Her eyes shot up. What? I'll protect you, feed you, keep you safe. In exchange, I get to say the Eastern Tyrant's prize is mine now. I'm not a prize, he smirked. You are to him. She turned away, cold air slicing across her face. I don't even know who I am. Then let me help you survive long enough to remember. Silence. Snow drifted across the stones. She felt like invisible threads were pulling her apart. I just want to go home, she whispered, then stay alive long enough to find the way. He reached for her hand. She didn't take it, but she didn't pull away either. Black Moon Keep, enemy territory. The snow had begun to melt, just slightly, softening the sharp edges of the mountains. But the frost still clung to the air and to her bones. Prudence walked slowly through the village that sat beneath the fortress, her breath visible in the cold. The prince had allowed her a brief walk with a chaperone, a soldier in emerald armor who kept his distance but never looked away. She tried to see it, the villainy, the darkness they warned her about, but all she saw was kindness. A girl handed her a woven bracelet. For the angel who fell from the sky, she said shyly. A baker offered her warm rice cakes. A midwife bowed deeply. An old man pressed his hands over hers and whispered, You healed my wife 2 winters ago, Lady Prudence. I never got the chance to thank you. She froze. What? He nodded. You taught her to boil ginger root with plum bark. You saved her life. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. No, he said gently, smiling. I could never mistake a face like yours. She left the village with her mind spinning. That night, outside her quarters, she sat on a bench carved from cedar, staring at the stars, the bracelet still in her palm. She couldn't breathe. Why were they thanking me? I don't remember them. I don't remember anything. The soldier standing watch nearby stepped forward, hesitant. I can bring you tea, my lady, he offered. She looked at him, startled. No, thank you. He hesitated, then sat across from her, his voice softer now. I was stationed near the Eastern Court once, he said. She tilted her head. And? I saw the Emperor after she vanished. She blinked. What do you mean? He didn't look at her directly. He tried to hide it, but there were nights when he thought no one was watching. He would just sit in the garden, in the cold, and weep. She stared at him, stunned. What? For her. For you. I don't remember him, she whispered. They say he's a monster. The soldier's voice was barely a breath. Then perhaps monsters can still mourn. He stood and walked away, leaving her shaken. That same night at the edge of the eastern camp, the spy galloped through the thick forest, cloak soaked in snowmelt, blood on his hands from pushing too hard. He didn't stop until he reached the eastern ridge, didn't rest until he threw himself from the horse and landed on his knees before a line of black and gold tents. A horn sounded, the guards parted, and Emperor Harran emerged, cloaked in black fur, sword at his back, his face sharp with frost and fire. Speak, Harran commanded. The spy bowed, gasping. Your Majesty, I saw her. Everything stilled. Saw who? The spy looked up, voice cracking. Her, Lady Prudence, in Black Moon. The words broke like thunder. Harran didn't move, didn't breathe. He blinked once, just once, then staggered back half a step, his breath hitching. She's alive? Yes, my lord. The spy bowed lower. She is alive. Later. That night, he sat alone. The scarf she once wore rested on the table. His hands trembled as he gripped it, pressing it to his face. She was alive. She was alive. Not a ghost, not a memory, but living, somewhere in the hands of his enemies. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. But something in him snapped. The ache that had made him merciful was gone. The love that made him hesitant was now fire. He rose, eyes dark with resolve. Before dawn, General Rue rode into camp just as the orders were being given. He dismounted, rushing toward the map table. Your Majesty, what are your commands? Harran looked at him, and for the first time in years, his voice carried purpose. Summon every regiment. We move before dusk. Toward the northern range? No. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the map. Through it. Rue blinked. Sire, that would mean war. It is war, Harran said, voice like iron. But your stepbrother, no more mercy. Harran's voice dropped lower, colder. He touched the one thing I swore the heavens themselves could not take from me. Now, not even the heavens will shield him. He has her, and I will burn Black Moon to ash to get her back. Black Moon Keep, the throne hall. The cold air in the stone hall was heavy, but Harran's stepbrother Zhang Xian, the northern prince, sat calmly on his blackwood throne, draped in furs, his fingers wrapped around a goblet of plum wine. A soldier rushed in and knelt. Majesty, the man panted, the emperor's messengers have returned. Zhang Xian raised a brow. And what does my loving brother have to say? The soldier swallowed hard and recited the message, Let my woman go, or I will wipe out everything that belongs to you. Silence. The prince stood slowly, circling the hall with deliberate calm. He picked up a dagger, twirled it once, and laughed. Romantic, predictable, suicidal. He turned toward the war map. Sent him a reply. A scribe stepped forward, ink ready. The The prince said coldly, "Tell him, choose, the throne or the woman you love, Eastern Empire. Command tent." The message arrived by hawk. Horan read it once, twice, then set it aflame with a single strike of his blade against a lantern. The flame caught, eating away the words. The entire tent fell silent. General Rue bowed. "Your command, Majesty?" Horan's voice was calm, icy, deadly. "I choose both." Northern villages. The villagers saw the black banners first, lines of soldiers moving like a river of terror through the snow. Howran's armies, 100,000 strong, crossed the northern ice fields like an avalanche. "Hide the children. Board the doors. The tyrant is coming." Women wept. Men cursed. Horses screamed in the distance. And in the heart of Black Moon Fortress, she heard it too. Inside the keep, Prudence's quarters. Prudence stood by the window, heart pounding. The wind carried only one name through the mountains now. Haran. The name clawed at her chest. It wasn't just fear. It was something else, like her soul was reaching for something just beyond her memory. "What's happening?" she whispered. The handmaiden beside her trembled. "The Eastern Emperor is coming." "For what?" "You," the girl whispered. "Everyone says he's here. For you." "That doesn't make sense. I don't even know him." "They say he will burn the north to get you back, that his heart went dark the moment you disappeared." "Why would I matter that much?" Prudence said, her voice cracking. The girl looked at her and said quietly, "Because he never stopped waiting for you." Outside, riots, panic, and pleas. Smoke rose from the lower city. Families ran. Soldiers scrambled. Bells tolled. In the chaos, villagers approached the gates of the keep, screaming, "You know him. Talk to him. Stop this." "You're the only one he'd listen to." "I don't remember," Prudence shouted through the bars, gripping them. "I don't even know who he is." She turned to the guards, breath ragged. "Please," she begged, "let me go. Let me find him. Maybe I can stop this. Maybe I can remember." "You're not going anywhere," a soldier barked. "You belong to our prince now." "No, I don't belong to anyone." "Too late for that," said another. They dragged her back inside. Hours later, it was dusk when they forced her to the cliff. Snow fell quietly. Below them, the black sea of Horan's army had reached the valley. Torches lined the mountain pass like a trail of fire. The prince stood beside her, armor gleaming with ice. "If I can't have you," he murmured, "he won't either." "You lied to me," she hissed, struggling against the ropes binding her wrists. "You all lied." "I gave you safety," he said. "He gave you war." "I never asked to be saved." But he wasn't listening. Snow was falling in soft, deceptive silence. But the wind carried violence. Zhang Xian looked toward the horizon. A single rider had broken from the army below. One man, alone, clad in obsidian armor, riding a white war horse, and coming straight for them. Horan rode like fire through the storm, his war horse tearing across frozen ground, hooves cracking ice as enemy soldiers scrambled out of his way. He didn't stop, didn't flinch, didn't blink, not even when blades were raised or arrows loosed, because he saw her, Prudence, on the cliff's edge, bound, wind whipping through her hair, eyes wide with fear. She was alive, and more than that, she was looking right at him. "Prudence!" His voice shattered the air like thunder. Her eyes locked on his, those eyes that once made her feel safe in a world she didn't understand. He looked like a storm in armor, but his voice, "Are you hurt?" It wasn't a tyrant's voice. It was the voice of a man in love. And for the first time since arriving in this world again, she doubted everything. His eyes held no rage for her, only fear, only longing, only love. Horan reined in his horse just feet from the cliff's edge. His eyes locked onto hers. He stopped breathing. It was her, alive, bound, afraid, but alive. She stared back, confusion and something deeper swirling in her eyes. "I warned you," Horan said without looking at the prince. His voice carried like thunder. The prince drew his sword. "And I gave you a choice. That was your last mistake." "She doesn't remember you," the prince said, gripping Prudence's arm. "She doesn't want you." Horan dismounted in one smooth motion. "Then why," he said, "is her heart racing?" Prudence trembled. The name, his voice, her chest ached like it was about to burst. "Stop this," she whispered, eyes wide. "Please, someone tell me the truth." "She left you," the prince snarled, "and you burned the world." "She was stolen," Horan growled, unsheathing his blade. "You'll destroy everything for a woman who doesn't remember you?" Horan's eyes never left hers. "I'd destroy the heavens themselves to be with her again." The prince drew his sword. "You can't have both." "I will." "You'll destroy your empire for her." "I built my empire for her." The prince's eyes darted. He saw it in Horan's stance. He'd already lost, so he did the only thing a coward would do. He shoved Prudence off the cliff. Time shattered. "No!" Horan screamed. Guards lunged for him. Too late. He dove, head first, into the abyss after her. The guards only caught the edge of his robe. It tore from his body like a shadow slipping into the wind. And then both he and Prudence were gone, falling. The wind howled past her ears as she plummeted, the sky shrinking above. But through the rush of wind, she heard him. "Prudence!" She opened her eyes. He was falling too, faster, arms outstretched, reaching for her like the world was breaking apart beneath them. And then, flash! She saw his face at sunrise, lying beside her in the garden. Flash! The scarf he gave her, midnight blue, to keep the wind off your throat. Flash! His voice, "You are my favorite story. I remember." Flash! The moment he named a region after her. The first kiss? The day he almost lost her to poison. Her chest seized. Horan! Then water. Dark. Icy. Crushing. She sank. He dove. Even in the freezing chaos, he found her. He wrapped his arms around her, kicking upward, pulling her back into breath, into light. They surfaced, gasping, together. His blood painted the water. He was wounded, but he didn't stop swimming. He held her, lifted her onto a shallow shore, crawled beside her, breath ragged, arms shaking. And then they collapsed, together, onto the sand. She lay on her back, blinking up at the silver sky. He turned toward her, chest heaving, blood sliding from his shoulder. She touched his face. He flinched. "You remember?" he asked, voice barely audible. Tears spilled from her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "I remember everything." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 2 years. And then he broke. Head bowed against her chest, arms clinging to her like a man on the verge of death. "I thought I'd lost you," he breathed. "I was going to burn the heavens to get you back." She cradled his face. "I was lost," she said, voice cracking. "But your love, it brought me back." His forehead pressed to hers. "I would fall again, 1,000 times, for you." And she whispered, through the cold and the tears and the ache, "I'm sorry I forgot you." He kissed her, gently, desperately, like someone waking from a nightmare and kissing the morning. Eastern Empire, Borderlands Outpost, Day 2. The guards found them at dawn, collapsed on the sand, soaked, bloodied, and half buried in frost, but alive. Alive! Horan lay on his side, unconscious, his arms locked tight around Prudence's body. His sword was gone, his armor fractured, but his grip on her hand, unbreakable. They tried to lift him. He growled in his sleep, "Don't! Take her!" The physicians knelt. "My lord, you're bleeding." He flinched, fingers curling tighter around hers. "She's mine." They tried again. He thrashed weakly. The attending physician sighed. Let him be. The Imperial Camp. The tent was dim, lit by soft lanterns and silent prayers. Prudence sat by Haran's bed, brushing his damp hair from his brow. His face was pale. His shoulder wound had reopened in the fall. An infection had set in. The royal physicians had done all they could. Now it was her turn. Using warm compresses, salve she made from ginger and mountain pine, and honey-soaked linen, she worked through the night, tending to the man who had dived through death itself for her. When a minister peeked in the tent, he paused in awe. She wasn't a political pawn. She was a woman in love, and everyone could see it. One night, the camp was asleep. A soft wind whispered through the canvas walls. Prudence sat by his side, fingers laced with his. Horan still hadn't woken, but every now and then, his lips moved like he was dreaming. She leaned close, her voice trembling. "I thought I was okay without you. I thought forgetting was mercy." She swallowed the lump in her throat, but it wasn't. It was torture I didn't understand. She touched the scarf he once gave her, now folded beside his bed. "I remember everything now. The garden, the stars, the way you looked at me like I was the sun." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. "If there's a way, I want to stay. Forever, if you'll still have me." Her voice cracked. "I love you, Haran. I always have." She gently pressed her forehead to his and closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. "I love you." And then his fingers moved. They curled slowly around hers, warm and strong. She gasped. His eyes blinked open, glassy but focused. His voice, low and hoarse, rasped, "Even in death, I would follow you." She broke, choked on a sob as she climbed into the bed beside him and wrapped her arms around him, careful of his wounds but unable to stop trembling. "You heard me?" He nodded weakly. "Every word." She pressed her face to his chest, tears soaking into his bandages. "You jumped after me," she whispered. His hand brushed through her hair. "You were falling," he said, voice rough with emotion. "So I did the only thing I could." "What?" He closed his eyes. "I followed my heart." Despite the pain, he held her tight. His jaw clenched, but he didn't let go. And as snow fell quietly outside the healing tent, the emperor who had once wept alone finally fell asleep in the arms of the woman who came back to him. Eastern Empire main gates. At first, there was only silence. Then came the pounding of drums, the cry of horns, and the sound of 1,000 voices rising in awe. The emperor had returned, alive, and at his side, wrapped in the same midnight scarf he once gave her, was her, Prudence. That evening, crowds lined the path from the gates to the palace. Nobles fell to their knees. Servants wept openly. Farmers came with offerings. Children tossed petals into the air. But none of that mattered to Haran. All he saw was her, beside him, whole, radiant, walking the path he once feared he'd tread alone forever. When they reached the steps of the palace, the chamberlain's voice broke as he announced, "By grace of heaven and blood of legacy, Emperor Haran returns to us." And at his side, the beloved of the empire, Lady Prudence. The crowd bowed in unison. She stood still, overwhelmed. Then Haran leaned toward her and whispered, "This was always yours." Later, the harem courtyard. She didn't expect the women to run, but they did. Not from her, to her. The harem she had once taught, comforted, or protected, embraced her like a sister returned from the grave. "Lady Prudence, I prayed you'd come back." One older woman knelt and touched her robe. "We kept your lessons going. The books, the gardens, the trade embroidery, everything. We passed it down." "You did all that?" Prudence asked, stunned. A younger concubine nodded, her voice trembling. "Because of you, we are no longer enemies to each other. We are family now, and no one dares say otherwise." Prudence wiped a tear. "I didn't think I made that much of a difference." "You were the difference," someone whispered, and she finally understood. That night, the imperial garden, Prudence stood alone beneath the stars. The sky shimmered in quiet glory above the lotus pond, wind rustling the reeds. She looked up, hugging herself gently. The words she'd heard from the villagers, the harem, the court ministers echoed in her mind. She brought harmony. She tamed the storm. She changed him. She changed all of us. Her, a woman from a world no one understood, was known, loved, accepted, not just by Haran, by an entire kingdom. She whispered to the night, "I didn't know I mattered this much." Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned. Haran, no guards, no titles, just him, in black robes, barefoot on the stone. "I thought I'd find you here," he said softly. She smiled. "I needed to see if the stars still remembered me." "They never stopped watching," he said. They stood side by side in silence. Then he spoke. "When you left, I didn't want the sun to rise again." She looked at him. "I woke up every day hoping the stars would return you. I kept your scarf on my altar. I turned away from every celebration. I fought without mercy." His voice cracked. "There was no color in my world, Prudence. No warmth. I ruled a throne of ice." Her throat closed. She stepped into him and rested her head on his chest. "I didn't know," she whispered. He placed a hand on the back of her neck. "It nearly destroyed me." She looked up at him, eyes misted. "But you waited." "Because I knew," he said, "that my soul wouldn't survive anyone else." Later, he blindfolded her gently, smirking at her protests. "Haran, what are you doing?" "You've had my heart," he said. "Now let me give you something more." He led her down a long corridor, quiet and warm. And then he stopped, removed the blindfold. She gasped. A courtyard, transformed, thousands of paper lanterns glowing like stars, hanging from trees, floating in fountains, lining every step. At the center, a platform made of wood and silk, layered with cushions and tea. She turned to him, stunned. "This is a piece of the valley," he said. "The one I named after you." She covered her mouth. "Why?" He stepped forward. "Because you're not just a part of my heart. You are the center of it." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't deserve all this." "You deserve a kingdom," he said. "You gave me one worth ruling." He offered her his hand. She took it. And under lanterns that flickered like heaven's applause, They sat together and dreamed of what came next. The Imperial Archive. The room was a cathedral of scrolls and silence. Howran stood alone, a single lantern casting shadows on the walls as he stared at the open scroll in front of him. His hand rested gently on the ink, still fresh, though centuries old in name. A record, a story, a key, Emperor Seongmin of the Kingdom of Joseon. He loved a woman not of his world, a black rider named Sierra, a woman from another time, and he built for her a compass that bent space itself, so she could ride between worlds. His chest ached, his mind reeled, but his heart, it knew, if it was done before, it can be done again. The next morning, Temple Gardens. Prudence sat beneath a canopy of plum blossoms, braiding strands of jasmine through her hair as she listened to the birdsong echo off the marble walls. She didn't see him at first, didn't hear his approach, but she felt it, the shift in the wind, the heartbeat in her chest. "Thinking of me?" Howran asked softly. She smiled. "Every time it's too quiet." He sat beside her, taking her hand, resting it in his lap. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something that might change everything." She turned to face him. "I remember what you said while I was unconscious," he murmured. "You thought I was asleep, but I heard every word." Her eyes widened. "You said you wanted to stay." She swallowed. "If it were possible." "It is." He pulled out the scroll. She unfolded it slowly, her eyes scanning the ink. "Who is this Emperor Seongmin?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "A man who loved a woman the world didn't understand. A man who built a bridge between her world and his." She looked up. "And you believe this?" "I don't believe," he said. "I know." She touched the parchment with trembling fingers. "But how? How can that kind of thing even—" "Our scholars traced it," he said. "The compass of realms. It wasn't magic. It was calculation. Time, space, rotation, sacred geometry." She blinked. "So it's real?" He reached into his robe and pulled out a small pendant, shaped like a disc, etched with 2 concentric rings and a single black stone in the center. "It's already being rebuilt," he said. "It may take months, maybe longer, but one day soon, if your heart ever needs to return home, it will be your choice." She stared at it, and then at him. "I thought you'd want me to stay," she whispered. "I do," he said, "more than anything, but not at the cost of your freedom." Tears welled in her eyes. He cupped her face gently. "You are not mine to cage. You are mine to love." And then he leaned forward and kissed her, slow, steady, full of fire and breath and every promise a man could make. Later, that night inside the Emperor's chamber, the world outside was quiet. Lanterns flickered like stars through the silk-paneled walls. They lay side by side, fully clothed but close, his arms around her back, her fingers tracing the scars along his chest. Neither spoke for a long while. Then, in a voice that broke through the dark, "Now you'll never have to choose." She lifted her eyes to him. "You'll have both, your world and mine. A home in both hearts, a legacy in both skies." She pressed her forehead to his. "I choose you, Howran." He pulled her close. "And I'll choose you in every world." 14 days later, the wind screamed down the cliffs where they had fallen. But Howran and Prudence had survived, and now the traitor would not. Zhang Xian ran. His breath came in panicked bursts as he tore through the mountain pass, cloak flapping like a dying banner. Blood from the earlier battle stained the front of his armor. He looked over his shoulder. and saw the black and gold of the Imperial Guard closing in. Steel footsteps pounded the rocks. One arrow sliced past his ear. He drew his sword, but his hand trembled. When he turned to swing, a soldier slammed his blade from his grip. It clattered down the mountain path and vanished into the dark. He staggered. A voice growled behind him. He touched what the king treasured most. Another, and betrayed the dragon throne. Rough hands grabbed him. Shackles locked around his wrists, heavy and cold. A black hood was thrown over his head, but not before he caught one last glimpse of the distant horizon and the banner of Haran's army rising in the wind. He knew then he had already lost. The return to the palace. The gates opened slowly as the guards dragged the traitor through the capital. The people lined the streets, silent at first, until they saw his face. Then came the spitting, the stones, the curses. Children who once bowed to him now hurled rotten fruit. A mother wept as he passed, clutching her son. The throne room. He knelt, forced down before the golden steps of the throne. The court was full, the nobles, the generals, the concubines. And at the top of the stairs, Emperor Haran stood, scarred from battle, face unreadable. Beside him, dressed in soft robes of moonlight, stood Prudence, alive, glorious, unshaken. She looked down at the man who tried to kill her with no hatred in her eyes, only quiet disappointment. Haran stepped forward. Silence fell like snowfall. "You tried to take her from me," he said, voice calm and cold. "You thought I would let the world forget. But the world will remember this." He motioned to the guards. "Now, the world will watch me take everything from you." Prince Zhang Xian was stripped of his royal sigil. His name was removed from all records. The scribes were commanded never to speak of him again. He was imprisoned in the Silent Tower, a cold stone fortress on the edge of the empire, where no voice was ever allowed to rise above a whisper. Some say he went mad after a year. Others say he whispered her name until his lips bled. Either way, he was forgotten, just as he had tried to erase her. As spring returned, blossoms reigned over the capital. Prudence and Haran walked hand in hand through the royal garden, the scent of plum trees blooming again around them. Some loves are not bound by time nor undone by memory. Even when forgotten, the heart remembers. The end, or perhaps the beginning, forever.